Hi, I'm really excited to start this thing again. So, in 2019, we decided that because there were no conferences and everybody was stuck at home, that we wanted to create any way where people could share some papers. So, we came up with replicating the advent calendars that are popular in some countries where there's a tiny door and every day you open the door and you get a treat or you get a chocolate or something like that. So we decided to make one, but every day we will talk about a different paper related to bats. This is why we have the Bat Advent Calendar. This year we're partnering with Global South Bats, which is a great new network that is coming up in this year. I will put the link in the description of the video if you want to join, if you haven't joined before. And on in this network, it is where we will be releasing the videos also in Twitter, if Twitter still exists by the end of the month. Let's hope it does. Um, so stick around because not every day, but almost every day, you will get a short synopsis of a fantastic bat related paper, and somebody will tell you why they like this paper and why they think you should read it. So today is my turn. My name is Luis Viquez, um, and I'm gonna talk about a paper that gets me super excited, and it's called "Contributions of Bats to the Local Economy Through Durian Pollination in Sulawesi, Indonesia," and it is a paper that was authored by Sherizade, Holly Over, and Susan San. Right. So let me switch the screen here so that we can see some. So this paper was submitted in 2018 and it was accepted in 2019. And here you can find most of the information about the paper. And one of the things that is fantastic about this is that when we talk about ecosystem services, there are several things that we need to um, certify that are happening. First, are the plants mainly being pollinated by the bats? Um, what is the impact if we remove the bats from the equation? And what is the economic contribution that the bats are providing by providing the system? And this paper has all of these things. So this is why it is, I would say it's a textbook example of how you should approach putting a value for ecosystem services, right? So a couple of the things that I want to start with is, in case you don't know durian, durian is it's kind of one of those fruits where people love it or hate it. It has a really strong smell, but to be honest, it's quite nice. It has like this unique taste. So once you get over the smell, the taste is absolutely fantastic and extremely popular in Southeast Asia. And the economy of durian represents $254 million industry for Southeast Asia. Indonesia, and I think this is data from 2014, produces about 860,000 tons of durian per year. And the country has determined that this is one of the top five important fruits for the country. It's also important to say that when we talk about durian, it is a it is more than one species. There's about 30 different species and 76 different varieties. Um, anyway, in the paper you will find a nice introduction of why this fruit is so important for Southeast Asia. Um, and one of the important things is that the flowers are self-incompatible, which means that they will need cross pollination to be able to produce fruits. And they also require animal vectors. So, this is a good system to try to understand how these pollinators are affecting the crops, right? So, another important fact that the authors highlight in a really nice way is that most of the durian in Southeast Asia is actually coming from what they call semi-wild agroforestry systems. So you have a patch of the forest, and this is surrounding by tiny farms that have some trees of durian, and this is where most of the durian is being harvested. So there's no large latifund, or there's not a big monoculture where you have hundreds and hundreds of trees. So this is embedded in a mosaic that actually is it's is making it easier for the bats to get to it, right? Because they have the forest right next to it. Okay, so coming back to the paper, the main objective of the paper was to understand the pollination of semi-wild durian in Sulawesi, right? So how do they do this? And this is where they are using three different methods. This is what I find so cool. The first thing is the flower perspective. Is the flower producing enough nectar? When is the flower open? Is the flower receptive in the times that the bats are flying? Second is the pollination biology. And this is where they do some exclusion experiments. So in durian, the flowers are actually coming out directly from the trunk, right? So you will see like the inflorescence coming out of the trunk. Um, and what they did is that they cover some of these flowers so that nothing could get through. Others had like a big mesh so that insects could get through, and others were completely open. So, in that sense, you're assessing what are the flowers able to pollinate when they are not accessible for insects and for the bats? Are they able to reproduce when there's only, well, to pollinate, sorry, not reproduce, when they're accessible only for the insects? Or when they're open, what is the impact of the crops that the bats are having, right? And this is where they uh, took all these different parts, and this is like the second part of the paper, which deal with pollination biology, and they also measured the fruit set at 20, at 10, 20, 30, and 60 days. And from these two, there's 2 points that are really important. That is the 20 and the 60 day. 20-day means that there was, if there's still fruits, it means that there's successive pollination. And 60 days is when you can say that there's successive reproduction in, in the durian. And finally, you know what the impact is, but you need to know who's coming, right? So this is where they use camera traps with videos, 15-second videos that were programmed to be triggered every 5 minutes, and just see who's coming, right? And see who is visiting and how they are behaving when they are reaching the flowers, right? So if we go back to my screen grab, now we can see some of the main results, right? So I'm gonna skip the part about the plant, but basically what they found is like, yes, this plant seems to be, has every clue that you will expect from a bat that is, from a plant that is pollinated by bats. So it fits with the Chiropterophilus centrum. Flowers are open for one night only, and they're fully open between 6 p.m. and sunrise. So they're available for the bats, and they have a 14. The sucrose content is about 14% in the nectar, which is just right for the bats. Okay. When we look at the other results, here we have the open pollination, the insect pollination, the closed pollination. What we can see is that, and remember that the two important dates is the 20 and the 60. In both 20 and 60, the what you get in open pollination, meaning when the bats had access to the flowers, is a higher yield of fruits than when only insects were allowed in the enclosures on, or when nobody was allowed inside the enclosure. So bats are having a big impact over the fruits. Um, then they go into finding which species are visiting. And this, I would recommend that you go and see the rest of the paper because it's just a fantastic paper. But just to spoil it a little bit, Eonycteris spelaela, sorry, Pteropus alecto, and Aceron celebensis are the three species that they found that were visiting the durian trees. And finally, when they take all this and they start to calculate what is the input, the economical impact that the bats are having in the crop. They found that the value is about $117 per hectare per each fruiting season. That means that for this village where or this town where they were working at, the economic impact is about $450,000, which is not something that you can easily overlook. And finally, one of my favorite phrases at the end of the study is, I'm putting it right here, but is the pollination services are valued as this much for the production of 15 tons of durian in this village. So it's tying it back not just to what the bats are doing, but also tying it back to who is raking the benefits. And in this case, it is a tiny village in Sulawesi. And this is really important because we need to include the communities. And this group has done a lot of work in these communities to try to get them into bat conservation. So I hope you go and read the paper. If you scan the QR code that you have down here, um, you will be you will land at a page where you can download the paper. And thank you so much for joining for this first day, and stick around for the next few days because you will be getting some interesting papers in this. And one last thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning is that Global Health Bats is the organization that is helping us build this year. Um, we all papers that you will see during this Advent calendar are led by um, Global South scientists. So we're trying to highlight science being done in the Global South by Global South scientists. So I hope you enjoy this, and please join us in our network. We're always happy to have more people in. Thank you so much.